Man, I love it. Love that so much. So Dave, we're going to get into some nuts and bolts kind of stuff today. Less of the theoretical, ethereal kind of topics, but like, real true nuts and bolts of Anthroponautics, like lay the actual foundation of what it is that all of our models, all of our ideas are built upon. And that is specifically the anthropic domain, coming from the word anthropo, which is the Latin root for human, right? This is where we get anthropology from, or anthropomorphism, or anthropometry. Anything that starts with anthropo is a reference back to this idea of the human, right? Originally, when we started developing these ideas, before we really developed this idea of the anthropic domain, or even Anthroponautics as a whole, we would often discuss things in terms of human terrain. Like, we knew that it was a people issue, or people having people issues, but we didn't quite have the word set for it yet. But human terrain kind of hit on it as far as we knew at the time.
Yeah, I find myself in so many conversations where people were looking for a thing that was the root of a problem. And my response would always be, this is a human terrain problem.
Yeah.
Like, this is a peopling problem, whether it be lack of people knowing how to take care of each other, because it's a placeholder term and it's part of the human terrain. It'd be a leadership problem.
There we go. Okay. I thought we were actually not going to use that word this time
at all,
but
it's going to come up. We're always going to bleep it out.
All right.
And that for years was kind of my answer to the why are we trying to place this on a thing or a method. It is just the makeup of people attempting to communicate with each other or power and influence each other.
Right.
And that term, when I dropped it on you, kind of created a whole subcategory on our whiteboarding and problem solving. And it was always in response to people looking for a thing to be the problem. And really, it was just peopling, or people not peopling well.
A thing as in, like, point to a piece of equipment or a lack of some sort of resource, or...
Right. If it was, say, students lacking knowledge, right? Not enough time. It was a curriculum issue. It was a leadership issue.
Come on. Okay.
It was a leadership problem. It really is, how do you teach individuals and then groups of individuals just how the intricacies of people coming together and communicating or power and influencing each other,
right,
in order for a greater good. And human terrain was this term that I guess maybe that's my pilot brain coming together.
I mean, it makes sense, because if we're talking about navigating relationships, it makes sense that there would be a terrain wherein you are navigating.
Right. And that kind of coined phrase with your brain, and for months, just whiteboarding this stuff, going, what is this? Like,
right.
What is this? We couldn't quite put our finger on what it was we were developing, although it continued to be interesting and it continued to be thought-provoking and it continued to show up. Like, the ideas in which we were kind of coming together continued to manifest themselves in reality.
Yeah.
Like, you're making conjunctures with physics equations. Because at first I thought, dude, you had just lost it. I remember some of those first whiteboarding sessions and just being like, I'm going to let you run with it and just
don't know where this is going, but I don't know. Fun doing it.
No, dude, but you were on fire about it with your whiteboard marker. And I'm like, okay. At first it was the lift, drag, thrust.
Right.
And those ideas continued to develop. In terms of the human terrain, we had split for like a night. I mean, we had just been developing ideas, and you punched it to me via text that the word anthro needed to be involved somehow. And we played with it, I think, for a couple of days until it was like, this is probably the highest and best attempt at trying to explain what it is we are developing in terms of recognizing that the way people organize themselves, communicate, problem solve, live, survive, replicate,
Yeah.
power, influence, lead, follow, is a domain in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really the last thing a fish would notice is water.
Right.
Because when you're in it, you don't know you're a part of a bigger thing.
Yeah, the fish doesn't know that it's part of a maritime or naval domain. I mean, it really doesn't. For a creature, animal, insect, all the way up to humankind, they do not understand fully the environment that is immediately around them, because it's immediately around them. It's just part of everything that they experience on the daily. And so it's not novel. It shares no information with them. There's no surprise, right? So when you're in it, like, you're compromised, like, because you can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't feel it.
Right. And the frustration of not having something go your way because you're using old books.
Yep.
Or you're using bad data or bad advice. You're not getting what you want. You're struggling. You're doing by and way all of the right things,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not getting the end result. Your value's not increasing. You're not influencing the way in which maybe your life expectations or the position you're in or is expecting you to perform. And it's because you're not trained.
Right.
And because you haven't asked yourself these deeper questions of what in fact is going on around me. There's a lot of very deep sciences, which I can claim expertise in none of. But in the same way that I learned to fly an airplane, I can claim no expertise in building the thing, feeling it. I can read a map, but I didn't build the thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's no reason that all these other studies that have figured these things out, we can't pull the immediately applicable lessons learned from them and start piecing them together in the understanding. It's just the understanding of what we have coined as the anthropic domain.
Right.
It is the human connective domain. And the way in which we want to talk about it is the modern, the current human interactive domain. And this is where we've got some notes and we'd like to dive into the origins of, again, the things even human beings didn't think about, before, we were grunting in dark caves.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like, the air domain didn't exist until somebody tried to, like, jump off a cliff and not fall, right? And that's the thing, is like the anthropic domain is, like, as we are talking about it, didn't really exist until very recently because of advances in technology, and we'll get into all of that. But I want to point out that fact that the air wasn't a warfighting domain. It wasn't a congested, contested, competitive domain until people started to see it for what it really was, right? So that's what we're trying to do here, is help people to see the human terrain, see the anthropic domain for what it truly is.
Well, technology had to take us into that realm. It had to turn it into something, because prior to, it was this unknown thing. There's a class in which I teach and it's about combat and combatives and military history. And there was a time in history where ships didn't exist.
Right.
So human beings would look out upon the ocean and they would wonder what was beyond the horizon.
Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, we look at the stars, wonder what is beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some point of human history, we'll know. Maybe not in this one. Human beings who existed before ships had sails on them. Like, that's just thinking about that alone just kind of blows my mind. Like, I'm a human being living in a certain time in history where the things that I would take for granted, like you and I are speaking a language, we're using our bodies to make sound.
Yep.
In a certain syntax. I didn't create this language, but I was taught it. And you and I can knowledge share a tremendous amount of information, which we're definitely going to hit on. But we take it for granted until some other newer technology allows information share between human beings. But grunting in the dark was the way prehistoric man, her facial expression was the way in which we communicate. But we developed that technology.
That nonverbal communication, the pointy looky, the eyebrows.
Right.
the shape of the mouth. It wasn't sound as communication beyond just what you said, like the grunting, making loud or soft noises, right?
And a human being would wake up with survival and replication was their only driver.
Yeah.
It was real basic Maslowian, like shelter, food, like that was it. And I don't think we lived that long.
No,
right?
No. We lived long enough. We survived long enough to replicate, pass on our genes, and then the cycle repeated itself. And that kept going, starting with the primates, obviously, because, we evolved from chimpanzees. They're our closest genetic relative, right? But there were also other Homo type species, right? Like the Neanderthals, Homo erectus, and whatever else, right? But we as Homo sapiens, naked murder apes, as Mike Sartain likes to call us, right? Developed tools itself, but also like communication beyond just grunting and the pointy looky, beyond nonverbal, right? To verbal communication. And that allowed us to work together to form tribes that allowed for greater cooperation and then greater survival as a result. And we wiped everybody else, off the planet.
Right.
200,000 years ago, we became the apex species on the planet, and it's been all downhill or uphill, however you want to judge it, ever since.
So, which bears repeating, because we've mentioned this in other episodes, that we are, and this really kind of hits at just taking it from the top in the history of where we like to explain this concept, is that we are prehistoric creatures.
Yeah.
Designed for prehistoric methods.
Like, enough time has not passed
For us to evolve.
Exactly.
Living in a time where we still have these medieval constructs, and we are operating in a world using godlike technology.
Yeah.
This is magic.
Yeah. Omniscience in your hand right there.
And we'll talk about how this has changed things. And I'm going to loosely quote Elon Musk on this one, that I think he was asked, I'd have to pull the video somewhere, but I remember him being asked, like, when are we going to be cyborgs? Like, when is that going to be a thing? And he's like, it's now. It's external.
Right.
When this becomes something that is, maybe it's wearable, because that's going to be in our future. Our kids will be wearing the technology, right?
It's already wearable. Like, I've got it here on my wrist, right? But, this is essentially wearable. It goes everywhere with me in my pocket.
It certainly does.
Like, I would not leave the house without it.
Should we discuss leg day broke my phone?
Yes.
So I ate it pretty good and smashed.
Leg day broke you and your phone.
And my phone. So baby giraffe going upstairs plus iPhone equals no iPhone anymore. So for about 2 weeks, because it took that long for me to get in.
Did you ever think that maybe there's more to life than being really, really, really ridiculously good looking?
What should have been like a 2-day turnaround ended up being 14 days. But dude, I was living 2 weeks like it was 1999.
Right.
And trying to communicate with people via email and just having to find you and be like, can I use your phone, make a call or something? No, these things have changed the way we people. I think that's another one of those.
Yeah, it's changed the human terrain.
The last thing a fish would notice is water. So now it's just become so part of our day-to-day and the way in which we communicate. You don't think about that being part of your matrix of decision making and why things are happening the way that they are happening. These first world problems or first world situations have removed most people from the critical thinking or critical thought about who they are, how they belong, how they interact, and how it certainly affects the way they show up, and it affects how they receive and how they give.
Yeah.
Why is the thing not working that I want to work? Why is it working?
Yeah. Is it repeatable?
Right. So, dude, let's take it from the top. Like,
we kind of already started on it. Like this idea that 200,000 years ago, we became the apex species because of our ability to organize communicate, work as a team far more effectively than all of our near peers around us, right? And so we wipe everybody else off the face of the map. We are now in control of the planet, but who we were then is essentially the same as who we are now. So who we were then was on 2 feet. We weren't driving cars. We weren't flying in airplanes. We were walking everywhere that we would go. And walking is really slow. And so we might be nomadic a little bit, following the herd or wherever the food is, right? But eventually, we discover agriculture and the ability to put stuff in the ground and have it grow up into food. And so we decide that we're going to stay put where we are, where there's good food sources, water, the weather is nice, right? And in that regard, we then become this tribe, it may be a village, maybe a small town. But the idea is that we only knew the people who were immediately around us because it was too hard, took too long, too dangerous to migrate, to travel to some other location. And that persisted for a very long time. That the likelihood of you being born, living, and dying in the same 20 square miles was incredibly high. You especially weren't going to travel across like an ocean and go to a different continent, right? You probably weren't even going to cross the river or the mountain range or go through that forest because of all of the wild animals and also all of the other wild tribes that were out there that are all competing against each other, right? And so that is the dynamic, that is the evolutionary psychology that we had then, which is what we essentially still have now. But things are obviously different because of technology, right? And we're still naked murder apes, prehistoric creatures, now living with medieval institutions and able to wield godlike technology. And the combination of all of that has drastically changed the anthropic domain or the human terrain, the way that we as human beings interact with each other. Where it used to be that if I wanted to confront you in some form or fashion, or if I wanted to even just maybe not make it competitive, let's just call it interaction. If I wanted to interact with you, I would have to find you. I would have to at least be within earshot, but more likely put eyeballs on you. And we would grunt at first, but then we develop language. And now we're having a conversation face to face, mano a mano, right? But that is all different now because of the development of technology, the ease of travel. And, it's no longer walking thousands of miles to get from one place to another, but we can travel in a car, by train or airplane, or maybe we don't even need to travel at all. And we can still interact with people who are across the globe and also even beyond it. Like people in space, like who knew that was going to be a thing? Especially when we first evolved, not only did the air domain not exist, the space domain and the cyber domain weren't even a inkling in somebody's head.
Right. How the carrier pigeon has evolved to text messaging.
Yeah.
Which is, if I want to stop that message from going, World War II trenches would have shotguns and they would shoot the birds out of the air.
Right.
Weren't those things endangered?
Yeah.
I think we shot so many of those things trying to stop messages from going places and now it's hacking and spoofing and whatever the cyber dudes are trying to figure out in terms of stopping messaging or slowing the ability to communicate via the cyber domain.
Yeah. It didn't even exist until
this technology evolved.
The technology evolved, especially the internet. We can make the argument that the anthropic domain, the modern anthropic domain, came into existence with industrialization, globalization, and the greatly increased speed of information, right? Through not carrier pigeons, but a telegraph,
Right.
sending electronic signals from point A to point B, essentially at the speed of light. That completely changed everything. But with the invention of the internet, with the connection of all human beings together, essentially the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? It's probably even less than that now. I think it's like actually it's 5 degrees of separation between you and some other human being anywhere on planet Earth because of the internet, because of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, all those other things. If you want to know somebody, you just need to, look at who their friends are on Facebook or whatever, and you could probably find a common.
Well, why is the mutual friends a feature? It lets
Right.
you know who's in your tribe. And what a great segue to bring up Robin Dunbar's book, Friends.
Yeah, the tribe, like who is on the inside versus who is on the outside. And we mentioned earlier the size of a tribe, the size of a village, the size of a town is probably somewhere around 150 people, because evolutionarily speaking, that's as many people as that we could cognitively, like that's as much as our brain can handle. This is all explained in Friends right there by Robin Dunbar. Highly recommend that you go take a look at it because it is the foundation of the human terrain, the anthropic domain. 150 people was as much as we can cognitively handle, right? That was then, and this is now. I have 1,000 Facebook friends, right? There have been studies that say that I can recognize somewhere around 5,000 faces, but not necessarily the names. But that doesn't mean that those people are actually in my tribe, right? I can cognitively keep 500 plus people in my head and maintain some sort of meaningful relationship with them. And that's the premise of his book, is that there is a line that starts about 150 people, that less than that, the people who are closest to you are your actual friends. And there are different types of friends, and we can go into what that means. But anybody that is beyond that line, anybody that is outside of your 150, that's called a stranger. And what do we teach our kids as they're growing up about strangers? Strangers are dangerous.
So this is now, human beings, just based on our nature, naked murder apes.
Yeah.
It's in our nature to have an us versus them, to create tribes of community, to hold on to resources. And then we become warring tribes when the they and the stranger danger come in. Because the assumption of the prehistoric animal is that if you're not in my tribe, if you're not one of us, then you're here to exploit and you're here to take these resources.
Right.
And those resources can be everything from food to, your survival and replicative needs, to your shelter, your safety, your language, your culture,
anything that is going to help them better survive and better replicate. If you have it and they want it, barring laws or other artificial means of preventing war and conflict from breaking out, they're probably going to try to kill you and take your stuff. Right?
Boy, that escalated quick.
I'm looking up how many countries there are.
Yeah.
In the world. And we had a quick discussion about this one. Want to venture a guess? Because
it's less than 200. It's somewhere between 150 and 200.
Why could there be more? It's 50 states. Why can't there be more? Maybe there's a correlation to this. Maybe we're reaching, but I actually think it's just in the way in which human beings, even in groups of governing, can only handle the idea that there's only 193 sovereign nations,
right,
that come together with their flags and execute diplomacy on each other.
Yeah, that is the tribe of planet Earth, but the limit, according to Robin Dunbar, is 150. And so,
could you name a whole 193 of those countries?
I might actually be able to. If I had a map Like, and I think I could.
I think it's unfair considering what we do as well. Just having
Stare at the globe all day.
Stare at the globe. No, you're right, but 193 countries, and then if you break down the Dunbar layers, right? There's like, who are the big kids on the block? Everyone knows them. Everyone wants to be them. Everyone wants to take their stuff, steal their technology, and then you get your supporting rings. I just thought that was interesting in this discussion about at a micro level, because we're going to talk about the Dunbar layers being the center. You are the center, the nucleus of this atom that's got 150 orbiting entities in it, and the strength of those entities strengthen your bonds, make you more powerful and influential. But to look at it from an individual state and then looking at it from a nation state, like
the math doesn't change from the individual up to the family or the tribe, up to the the city, the community, up to the as big as you want to get it, all the way up to the nation state. The math is still the same. The anthropic domain is still the same. Anthroponautics doesn't care how many people are involved. It still applies.
And the math per our anthropronautic equations, they're the same. The formula for how a nation state yields its power and influence is the same formula at an individual level.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more in depth about what that actually looks like. So this is a graphic that is taken straight from Robin Dunbar's book. The first thing to notice here is the concentric circles. As we've been talking about, there are these different layers, starts with you at the center, goes out to 150, and then there's this thick, dark line. That is the demarcation of friends on the inside and strangers, people that you don't actually know. You may recognize them a little bit, maybe just recognize them as an enemy. They're on the outside, right? So what do these different layers mean? So the ego is yourself, and it is possible for you to have an intimate relationship with somebody there. Just a side note, I think that spot is reserved for you and your God, but we can have that conversation another time. The very next layer is the close friends. Close friends are people that, like, at the drop of a hat, you would sacrifice something incredibly valuable for them. Your time, your money, whatever is important to you, without any questions asked or desire to or expectation that you're going to be repaid, you would do that. The example that I like to use is that there was a time, Dave, that I said, there's this thing that costs $1,500 and I need you to do it right now. And you're like, done. And it's paid off. Like, it's been an incredibly useful thing to us, right? You did it to me. You're like, hey, there's this thing I need you to spend $500 on right now. And I was like, done. Easy. That is because you and I are close friends. We are in each other's 5-layer of these Dunbar layers. So that gives you an idea of what it means to be a close friend. Beyond that, outside of the 5-layer is the 15-layer, or your best friends. People that are incredibly important to you, but don't meet that same level of intensity of a relationship that you would, at the drop of a hat, no questions asked, without any expectation of repayment, go to bat for them in some form or fashion. But you're still going to spend a lot of time with them. They are an important part of your life and your social interactions. Beyond them is the 50-layer, good friends, people that you know and like. You may even spend some time with them, but they don't meet the criteria for the others. And then beyond them, Robin Dunbar calls them friends. Really, they're just all the other members of your tribe, people who are peripheral to what you do. You know who they are. Their presence in your life is going to help you to survive and replicate in some form or fashion, but they don't meet the requirements of good, best, close, or intimates as far as your friends go. Beyond that line is people who add no value to your life. Otherwise, they would be closer to you. They're just acquaintances. They're people that you might say hi to or smile at in the hallway as you pass them, but are they really part of your tribe? Are they helping you to survive or better replicate in any way? Probably not. In fact, they may be an enemy to you. They may be dangerous to you. They may want what you have inside your tribe, and they may make the effort to hurt, harm, distract, destroy you in some form or fashion. What it was then, 200,000 years ago, is essentially the same as it is now. We are still the same creature from before. There hasn't been enough time passed for us to evolve into something different. But what is different now, the obvious difference is that we can now travel much faster. Speed of travel is greater, globalization, speed of communication, especially through the internet. And so this then brings up the idea of actual human interaction as it exists today, is that it doesn't have to be like it was before. It doesn't have to be in person, mano a mano, me staring into your eyes and reading all of the nonverbals. It can be just words. It can be a form of stored memory as like a video or even a book or something else. So I can have a meaningful relationship with somebody who I have never actually seen before because I'm receiving their information, right? And that's what all of these books are, is us having a meaningful relationship with Isaac Newton and Ray Kurzweil and Robin Dunbar and Sun Tzu and John Boyd, like all of those people who are long gone, or we have no potential for actually interacting in person with, can still be part of our tribe, can still influence us, or we can influence them in some form or fashion, right? And so because human interaction is so different now from what it was 200,000 years ago, that changes the human terrain. That changes what is now what we call the anthropic domain. That changes the tools, techniques, procedures, the tactics, all of the things that go together, the models that create anthroponautics that allow us to navigate. That's the nautical piece, right? The human, the anthropo piece, hence anthroponautics, the human terrain. Everything is different because of the advances of technology, even though we still have the same monkey brain. When we talk about using mathematical principles and these other sciences that go into this, we can rely directly on information theory and how knowledge gets communicated across different channels. What are the transmission rates? How can you avoid surprise or maybe benefit from surprise? And the ideas of information entropy. I mean, we'll get into all of that at some point, but it is this interaction, the way that we interact now, has enabled the use of math, physics, these other sciences for the creation of anthroponautics for navigation through the anthropic domain. It's real.
And our models of, again, in science, right? Models are wrong, some are useful.
Yeah.
They believe these are useful. And it'll be interesting when we start developing these ideas and sharing them, that I'm kind of excited for the thrashing that's about to start on some of these things that we want to share, because we spent a lot of time acknowledging the analysis that we are the prehistoric animal with godlike technology, but it's going to start clashing against the medieval social construct.
Right.
And it's the conditioning that things should be. And we broke that down in an episode about the powerful are going to work within the equation and master it.
Yeah. You said one of the naughty words. You said should. So here you go. That's for you.
Right. There's judgment. But these medieval social constructs and the way in which things should be, the way we should communicate, the way we should tribe, the way we should relation, the way we should communicate, the way we should.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is should doesn't exist in math.
But this is what's taught.
Right.
Which is, now we take it back, it's just bad TTPs. Like, you're going to hold on to them because it's the way you were trained. And to go against your training is like heresy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, I'm going to go against this. And we are programmed, which is another influence is up there.
Yep.
Click, run.
Yep.
Which is in the, we are programmed.
Robert Cialdini's influence.
And that programming is within our orientation, as John Boyd.
And that's because that's how we evolved.
Right. So we are behaving in a way that we don't even recognize. We are attempting to communicate, which is a piece of technology, in the way using technology to achieve an effect for the benefit of satisfying the medieval construct.
Right.
And it is hurting us. Hence the clashing of some of these ideas. I believe in the future there's going to be different ways to do things. I would like to see in the future, I mean, if I could fast forward myself through time, right? And see what had changed. Did we ever actually address the problem of the way in which we construct ourselves?
Right.
Currently, because some of the things that we do now are just, they're so problemsome, but we haven't broken, like there hasn't been a social norm of like, let's stop doing that thing.
Yeah.
Let's stop going to school the way we go to school. Let's stop socially constructing ourselves in organizations the way that we do. Like, this makes no sense. We shouldn't hear ourselves like this. There shouldn't be this particular chain of command or
hierarchy,
business business breakout, or the way we headquarter, or maybe this socioeconomic thing we do in families doesn't work because of the math needs to change. There's one I really want to hit on, and it's just going to light everyone on fire. So I'm just going to drop it. Marriage.
Yeah.
Which.
Marriage, that blessed arrangement.
The Western nation idea of two people coming together and signing a contract and forever until kingdom come. And man, it's got a failure rate of 63%. And that's the ones that terminate.
56% is the most recent published divorce rate, but that says nothing about like marriage satisfaction. How many people stay together because of cheaper to keeper, or we're doing it for the kids, or there are any number of ways that a marriage can fail that is far beyond the 56% that actually end in divorce.
So, I mean, we could latch onto that and run a marathon distance, and that thread would still be, we'd still be unweaving that sweater.
Yeah.
Another day. But it is one of those medieval social constructs that the naked murder ape doesn't do well at.
Right.
In the advent of technology, which has now put us in a global socio-sexual marketplace.
Yep.
We can't handle it.
Yeah, we're not designed for this.
So there are medieval social constructs that are falling apart because the technology is affecting the human being.
Yeah, the technology allows you, as I was saying earlier, to have a tribe that is not just the people who are in your immediate vicinity, right? It allows you to find a spouse, if we want to talk about marriage, from someplace, the other side of the world. Mail order brides, right?
And that's been a thing for, has that always been a thing?
I mean, it's always been a thing in that going and attacking the other tribes. There's this book by Hector Garcia called Alpha God, The Psychology of Religious Violence and Oppression, which, if you are a religious person, I highly recommend that you take a look at this book. But in it talks about how it was normal, that over the course of evolution, human evolution, for this tribe to go attack that tribe and take their women, right?
Which who was the introduction? I believe it was Rollo Tomasi in the first Rational Male, where he talks about war brides.
Yeah, that's where the war brides dynamic comes from, is because the women who were taken, those who survived, are the ones who fell in love with their captors. This is where you get Stockholm syndrome and hybristophilia and stuff like that. It's how the machine is designed. It's how it's evolved over time. The old medieval institutions don't like that the adaptation that helped us to survive and replicate for hundreds of thousands of years doesn't line up with their religious ideals. Again, here it is.
Marriage, that blessed arrangement.
Well, there's the judgment piece that we truly want to be cognizant of and avoid in a lot of these discussions. And certainly, probably in the near future, like we're going to bring in conversation, and we're already prepared for a lot of hate and discontent.
Yeah.
Because it fully pushes against the judgment piece, the should. Like there's a should crowd that is going to anchor so much of this can't possibly be true. And granted, we're exploring these ideas.
Yeah.
Right. But if an observation is made repeatedly, and it's just putting it out there, I mean, we are trying to approach solving a lot of these ideas and problems and this look at this human terrain, the anthropic domain, kind of in a new way. Like, does it exist? Absolutely. Are sociologists talking about it? Probably in their own language. Are psychologists talking about it in their own language? Absolutely. Are they all coming together as a practical science? If they were, we would have found it.
Well, you mentioned all of these other disciplines, but I would offer to you that sociology is a study of the anthropic domain. Anthropology is a study of the anthropic domain. Political science, economics, strategic theory, if it involves humans and if the humans are interacting with each other, that is the anthropic domain.
That is anthroponautics.
And that means anthroponautics applies. So what we are proposing here, the ideas that we are coming up with, the models that help you to better understand the anthropic domain and how to navigate within it, mean that sociology is no longer needed. It's defunct because, one, it's whatever they're studying is already part of the broader umbrella of anthroponautics. But also, they're giving you bad advice. They're giving you bad TTP.
It's just anchored in old books. Maybe that science changes when new information is applied. Maybe, because now we're trying to problem solve through a different orientation. Just use this algorithm, use this particular formula to now attempt to solve said problem. And then it calculates a different number. And wow, we hadn't thought about trying to solve.
I would love to have these conversations with a professional sociologist, professional anthropologist, political science community organizer, whatever your job is relative to human interaction. I would love to show them the math. I would love to explain what anthroponautics is and then ask them, show me where I'm wrong. And I put that invitation out to, really anybody. If you're listening to this show, if you are, receiving this information as part of this right here is actually part of the anthropic domain, is that we are sending
information share
bits of information out there. I would want that person, you right now listening to us, show us where we're wrong. I want that to happen. Tell me where the anthropic domain doesn't actually exist. Tell me where anthroponautics doesn't apply. Tell me where I'm wrong so that we can fix it. I would like to have that conversation.
I think those conversations are
I'm sure
coming.
I'm sure that there are going to be plenty of people who don't like it, but are they going to actually be able to point to where we are wrong?
We're witnessing a lot of these conversations happening throughout the interwebs. Some are a lot more geared towards the sociosexual dynamics. Some of them are in relationship advice. Some of them are in marriage advice. Some of it is in, get ready to hit the button, it's in leadership training. Some of it is in whatever modern take on how to win friends and influence people. It looks like it's all out there.
That book.
Right.
Don't you mention that book.
Well, I brought it up because it's a classic. And as we went through those 7, we even beat those up. So I want to go back in time and sit down with
Dale Carnegie
and just be like, but what would he know? I mean, he's developing these ideas at this particular time, right?
I mean, can we say he was wrong? I mean, he was clearly very successful.
He was right for his day. And then the anthropic domain changed because of new technology. And I figure we'll evolve to some point where the things that we're developing may or may not have applicability.
Yeah.
But this is supposed to continue. The study of this is supposed to continue. What won't change is the naked murder ape is going to want to survive and replicate and have power and influence.
Yeah. That's going to be the case forever. Well, not necessarily forever, because evolution is still going to be a thing forever.
Is there some place in the future where we just become cooperative, peaceful, prayer, holding hands
and singing Kumbaya?
I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
Ray Kurzweil thinks that, as our technology transcends our biology and we merge together with our technology, and then we upload our consciousness to the cloud, and we no longer are a permanent physical existence. We can change at our whim and we can live forever. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, but then we won't be humans anymore.
But, maybe we still will be. I don't know.
Be interesting to see where it goes.
It will be.
But currently,
for right now,
there's a lot of bad advice being given to people that want to secure their own sovereignty.
Yeah, I can't give you advice for what the anthropic domain is going to look like 12,000 years from now. I don't know that.
There was a time in history where ships didn't exist. You couldn't get on an airplane. We take the shit for granted now. Louis C.K. was given an interview or a stand-up bit about.
Yeah, he's doing an interview, late night show interview. The video is everything is amazing. Nobody's happy.
We have Wi-Fi on airplanes, and just the fact that you could sit on a magical seat in the sky.
Yeah.
And people are
complaining that the Wi-Fi doesn't work.
People are losing their minds on this magic invention that in a number of hours you're in a different continent.
Yeah, because when you're in it, you're compromised.
It's just people boarded the Mayflower. Half of them died. Oregon Trail, our lives are so, we need such a change and such an adventure and I'm willing to sacrifice half my family to go on the Oregon Trail to end up in a place where there could possibly be better opportunities. No one now, at least not in the West, living first world problems, sacrifices that much.
Right.
To change their lives, to move, to go over the horizon, to change their Dunbar layers?
But that's because we're still the same machine that existed 200,000 years ago. And we're designed for discontent because it pushes us to go find food and shelter. And because if we didn't, we would just sit there on the ground and be happy and then die.
Well, it's not how the machine's designed.
Right.
So,
yeah. So of course, even if you're flying through the sky at 700 miles an hour, crossing oceans and going to new continents, you're still going to be discontented.
That's how the machine is designed.
That's how the machine is designed.
So attempting to solve problems where you think cooperation is going to be the default, it's bad advice.
Yes.
Because it doesn't work.
Yeah. The point that I was trying to make is that all of those disciplines that study human interaction in some form or fashion, all of them fall under anthroponautics, and all of them are going to essentially be, I don't want to say that they'd be useless, because they still have some ideas, especially analytical tools that can help us to better understand the way that people interact. But if those tools in your analysis and your synthesis provides advice that doesn't help people better survive, better replicate, then it's not useful. It's not going to persist.
Well, we've made the observation that so much of the information and or advice that is out there blames the operator for it not working.
Right.
Which is not to place judgment on it, but ultimately that's, according to my calculation, that's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm teaching a student something that is not producing a positive result, and then I'm going to blame the student / operator for its failures.
Right.
Because even the teacher doesn't understand that the concepts and the tropes that are being taught are, well, they're wrong. And they're wrong because they don't work.
Yeah. Because it's based on bad data. It is what people want to have happen, but it's not what actually happens. And there is a place for placebo. We could show that in the OODA loop, There is a place for manifesting, if you will, a possible result, the desired result. But it's not sustainable. It's not repeatable. What's repeatable is what people have evolved to do and have done over many thousands of years.
Well, is it offensive to say that human behavior is very predictable?
It is. And that's the whole point of this book, is that it's very predictable. That's the whole point of all of this, is that there are principles by which you can navigate the anthropic domain.
Because gravity's pretty consistent. We don't know what it is, but we can use it.
Yes.
To calculate.
Like even actual like terrain, like that mountain is always going to be there. So I'm going to use that mountain as a principal point of navigation, right? Well, there are things that people are going to do 99% of the time. And this gets into probability and information theory and entropy and surprise. Like I promise you, the mathematical principles are there and we will explain them. But if you're trying to help people navigate based off of what you want to have happen, that is very different from giving people advice based off of what actually happens in the anthropic domain as it currently exists, which is a combination of who we were then, which is the same as who we are now, and the technology that enables interaction at a much greater scale and much faster speeds than what we initially evolved for.
And all of this now requires a different way of thinking, operating, teaching, training, and maybe even life outcomes. Like what is even possible now for someone living in this time to achieve, to take on, to what's the new challenge over the horizon in this new, well, the domain has always been, but it's changed.
Right.
It's different than it had been in the past.
And that is the point of Anthroponautics, is for people to take these tools, take these models, take these TTPs and use them to figure out what that's going to be. We're not going to tell them what it should be, right? But we're going to say, this is how things work. Now go and build something for yourself. Just as if you were taking Newton's laws or Maxwell's equations or even Einsteinian gravity, general relativity and all that. Take those tools and build something that could potentially land on Mars or navigate past Neptune and go out into the solar system. Maybe even end up on some planet in the galaxy Andromeda. I don't know. And frankly, I don't care. I don't care what you're going to do with it. I would love for us to hold hands, sing kumbaya, but I can't project to you what's going to happen 12,000 years from now, or what's going to happen with people that are not inside my tribe, right?
Right. I don't know what murder apes are going to do with this.
I don't.
But it exists.
Well, I do know what they're going to do with it. They're going to survive and replicate.
Which they're doing anyway. But I want people to be better at surviving and replicating. And that's Darwinian, I guess, right? That's people getting hold of this that, well, really want to make a push for securing their own sovereignty, will use these principles to, well, do what they will. Willingness. Do what they will with this information. They'll change their TTPs and they'll see different results for it.
Right.
Based off of how human beings are currently behaving in the technology and the changes in the anthropic domain.
And as a result, 200,000, 4 million years from now, we will have evolved into something else. And then we can have a conversation about what the anthropic domain looks like at that point. I think that's a good place to end.
Boom.
All right. This has been a production of Anthroponautics, owned and operated by Slade Enterprises. Don't steal our stuff or we'll come after you like naked murder apes.